Hello and welcome, NekoAV here with another video, and it's going to be about how most people don't understand the arts. Now, I know that seems a bit ridiculous because when it comes to the arts, people will often think of paintings and sculptures, and of course, there's also a lot of people who also think in relation to propaganda posters. And I'm not going to say those aren't art because those definitely are. However, a lot of times whenever someone talks about being an artist and the arts in general, people often think that's it, except for the fact that, well, when it comes to the arts, you could basically separate it into three different categories. You have the visual arts, the audio arts, and the literary arts. And of course, various media do tend to blend these arts together, which can be seen when it comes to stage performances, cinema, and cartooning. And this also includes manhwas, manga, anime, and stuff like that, as well as like anyone who does a, a skit with virtual characters. That is basically what I mean when it comes to art and media and the arts in general. And a lot of other people who, when it comes to art, talk about this. However, most people not only have this very narrow view of what the arts are, they also tend to be very cynical. And I have learned that sometimes people apply, this is the reason why some people will favor something that's quick and easy to obtain over something that someone actually works hard on. As well as why some people tend to think that there's no real work in it. I mean, matter of fact, even when it comes to video production like what I'm doing, there are some people out there who would say that I'm better off just getting a coat to wear over my black shirt, and just stand in front of camera and talk. But no, that's not how I am. That doesn't say me, you know. And even though what I'm showing on my in my video is still a work in progress, I must admit, which I should really be working on, but I've been busy with either work or doing research for this. And when it comes to stuff like video making and such, a lot of times, yeah, people do actually do a lot of research, and making videos and doing animations or anything in relation to art and media, it doesn't start when you push record. It starts with everything that you have to set up before you hit the record button, or everything that you plan out before you write your first sentence, or whatever the case may be. It does vary from media to media, as well as style to style. However, I do notice another thing, one thing that is a huge drawback when it comes to the arts, which is how much cynicism is out there. And yeah, I get it. A lot of people like to throw in the typical whatever the buzzword of the day would be, such as how some people would say they're so-called real, or they say they are based, when the fact is that they are just really cynical when it comes to what's going on. They have a very narrow view, and they tend to miss the forest for the trees, you know? And that is one of the more annoying things when it comes to the whole discussion about art, because there's a lot of people who understand the value of art, but then there are those who, because of this cynical take, don't believe art has an intrinsic value, despite the fact that art is a part of what makes architecture work. Art is the reason why you have the music that you enjoy. Art is the reason you have whatever fiction you enjoy reading. Art is the reason you have your favorite poem and prose. But of course, a lot of people tend to don't really think that when it comes to the arts. And yeah, this is a bit of a rant. This is something that has been distracting me, I must admit. It's been distracting me for a long time, and my voice is getting a little weird there. Pardon me. Alright, that should be better. But yeah, when it comes to the arts, a lot of people think it's just one thing and that's it, which is why people will, for example, say the arts is just luxury and that's it. And no, it is not just what famous painting or sculpture you buy. It's also something like putting pen to paper or pencil to paper, if you prefer, and like write out your thoughts or draw something that just comes to your mind, or picking up an instrument and playing it, just going with the flow of it. Of course, though, a lot of people like to say that, well, there are still barriers to entry and stuff like that. And no, there are no barriers to entry, really, which is why a lot of people say just pick up a pencil and a paper and that's it. It doesn't have to be good as long as it's you, you know? But a lot of people seem to don't think that, especially since a lot of people will view art as just, which goes back to the luxury thing, which is the last thing I've seen people talk about, which is the whole transaction thing. A lot of people say that there is a transaction there. What's the point of doing something if you're not going to make money? But then comes the question of what's the point of eating? What's the point of sleeping? What's the point of, pardon my language, but what's the point of using the toilet? You don't make money off of any of that, but though you recognize those as necessities, those are things needed to live, And we are having a bit of a deficit. A lot of people do talk about this when it comes to emotions, and I do believe that the arts is a great way of connecting to our emotions. I am also someone who believes that emotions is a strength. Unfortunately, we tend to be weak because we tend to ignore our emotions. We don't have an outlet for our emotions, and then people end up becoming unstable because of their emotions are bottled up and they have no catharsis, no way to release that emotion, no way to just get it out there, you know, which is also why I'm doing this video, because this is something that has bothered me and often has contributed to my nihilism before I finally knocked that down, and you can tell I'm no longer giving into nihilism because of the fact that I've been releasing videos at least once a week. I try to aim for once a week if possible. If not, then maybe no more than 10 days in between videos. I try to do that. Well, maybe better to say no more than 15 days in between videos because of how long a week is. But yeah, it's really easy to listen to this stuff, end up being cynical yourself and unfortunately being nihilistic, thinking, well, there's nothing to live for, there's nothing to do. Why bother doing anything? Not to say I had any negative thoughts like that, but I did have a negative view of there's no point in doing anything other than to just exist, I myself found that I was just existing for quite a long time, and the arts does allow me to live, you know, be me, be human, be sentient, which is also a big reason why the arts are so important. Allows oneself to become yourself, become whole, have some self actualization, become a better self. If not from other people's arts, then whatever art you create. Even if it's not the best thing out there, even if it's not something that makes money, at least it gives you a release, eases the mind, and allows you to connect with a part of yourself that makes you whole. Unlike everyone else who's wondering about like a mindless drone, waiting to be told what to do, and having nothing else for their life. And for those people, I would say this: pick up a pencil, pick up paper, Just write your thoughts down, whatever those thoughts may be. Read those thoughts back to yourself. Who knows? It may actually be something that serves your health. So, with all that said of my ramblings, I am Neko AV, and I do thank you for watching.